Went through the last 30-minute podcast I did, and I was not impressed by the pitch of my voice. In real life, I have a deeper voice than I did in the video, and so I kind of don't know why the voice was, so high. But I think maybe when I do these videos, I talk in a higher voice than I would to a person on the street, because I'm sort of neuroticizing openly about my innermost qualms. Yeah, but otherwise I'm not really exactly sure. Something to do with the digitization of the sound waves, I'm sure. Okay. Anyway, I'm playing as a scout. Of course, as soon as I engage the game itself, I foolishly die. Not the matter though. Not to worry. Never the matter. Never the matter. See, I'm such a dipshit. I don't even know the most basic, idioms. All right. So, I love how there's just a blimp right there. Oh, it's gone, dude. This game, I can't control it, man. But there's a blimp right there. Now it's gone behind the haze of the stormy night. Alright, see, that was cool, but this guy's gonna kill me right now, because with that gun, you have 11 rounds in it. It's a beast of a handgun, but it's 11 rounds, but it takes forever to reload, and so if you, miss 3 shots and hit the guy with 4, you're not gonna be able to kill the second guy, unless you're head shooting him. And I wasn't head shooting the guy, so it's just kind of a large mess. Alright, so what I'm doing is I'm trying to get headshots, because once I get headshots, then I can advance to the next tier in this. What you see in the corner is something called Orden de la Cruz del Rayo, which means, I guess, I actually don't know what it means. I think it's like the sunshine medal, roughly speaking. And yeah, Orden de la Cruz de Rayo. So to me that means the cross of the ray, which does not translate in any sensible to any sensible, I guess, lexicon, right? But it's lexical. It's a lexical error. So this is day 2. Never mind all that. Never mind all that. This is day 2 of my podcast. I try to get the first couple ones out quick, because just trying to focus on output at the beginning. It's not going to be the best because I'm in a little bit of a sour mood. I already played this game for about maybe an hour, maybe a little bit more. Probably an hour. And then I also watched a 30-minute video on whiskey, connoisseurship, whiskey sommelier, nonsense. And I kind of in a sad. I fell into a sad sack, because the guys making the video were like, I don't know, they were just really dorky, and I realized that the whiskey people, I don't know, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm the pinnacle of masculinity, but there's something about dudes who are really into whiskey where they kind of, I mean, at the end of the day, it's, they're describing flavors of liquid in their mouth. The sea breeze peppermint, that came of the aged barreled oak, that kind of jazz, right? So you can tell that there's an effeminacy to the connoisseurship of whiskey. And I wouldn't have minded the whole video if it weren't I wouldn't have minded it if it was a 10-minute video. But they blew out 30 minutes, and it wasn't 30 minutes of
Hemos tomado el objetivo Charlie.
¡Ahora controlamos ese objetivo!
Okay, so this guy, this intelligent molecular biologist, clearly kind of like a foreign guy from like, I don't know, Asia or somewhere, middle of Asia. He says, no, cocaine is ecgonine, a tropane alkaloid with sympathomimetic stimulant properties. It is the most potent anti-asthenic nature originated compound. So it's great for asthma. I'm gonna look that up. I don't think that's what that means. It could mean it. Amphetamine is the short name for alpha-methylphenylethylamine. It's also a stimulant amine with pro-sympathetic and pro-cholinergic properties depending on the dose incubated. They are structurally distinct despite similar mechanism of action. Alright, so I'm going to look up two things. I'm going to look up mechanism of action, because I don't know what the hell that is. And I'm also going to look up anti-asthenic.
Hemos tomado el objetivo Delta.
¡Amigos! ¡Tenemos el objetivo!
Okay. So this guy actually, in his own intelligent way, defended cocaine because he said that it's anti-asthenic. Asthenia is a Greek word used by doctors that means weakness, physical weakness. So when something's anti-asthenic, it means that it helps them get away from the weakness or strengthen. So cocaine is good at, I guess, making people like move around physically, or toughening people up or something. So I guess it's you could sort of view it as more similar to steroids than to speed, methamphetamine, amphetamine, because I believe amphetamines act a lot on the brain and residually act on the body, but most of the action is okay. So a mechanism of action, I'm looking it up. In pharmacology, the term mechanism of action, MOA, refers to the specific biochemical interaction through which a drug substance produces its pharmacological effect. Yeah, so the mechanism of action on cocaine is a lot different, and that is why it's I mean, intuitively I knew that, and so that's why I went up to her and I called her out on it, and I didn't want to do it to her face and during class. Well, I wanted to do it to her face, but I didn't want to do it in the middle of class because I didn't want to embarrass either her or myself. Mostly, I guess I just didn't want to embarrass her. Although it might just chalk down to personal shyness. I didn't really speak up in class. Although there was a lot of shitheads in that class, and I kind of, I don't know them. I mean, maybe they're nice people, but they said some shithead stuff, and I told them, like, I spoke loud enough for that section of the class to hear me, but not for the whole entire class to hear me, because what I was saying was pretty rude. The guy was saying stuff about, like, he was posing a lot of questions about creationism and the ancient, I mean, it's not even a relevant debate, but it was an old debate about biology versus evolutionist theory versus creationist theory, and it was only tangentially related to, the field of biology. So I don't know. But it was the first day, and they usually the first day of work is kind of a layup. I mean, I guess I should have just been glad that we weren't, she wasn't drilling us on the syllabus. I mean, that would have been probably the worst case scenario. By the way, I'm surprised. I've been in college courses since 5 years ago, right? So, in the 5 years of all the courses I've been in, or in that time frame, let's say, like, it doesn't seem like they've changed the whole, like, we're gonna hand out a syllabus at the first day and just, like, recite it, like, as like a lecture, even though they could just go off and, like, read it after class on their own, right? It doesn't seem like that has changed at all. And I'm sort of wondering if that's a practice is like slowly leaving, and I'm just not hip to it, or if it really is going to just stick around for like eternity, like it seems. I mean, everyone I've talked to has complained about the first day of class just being, no content, just like you just wrote re-summarization of a paper that was it's mandatory to hand out anyway. So I don't know. But I'm getting garbled by the talk of this. It's really not the most compelling subject. I'm trying to find a way to shift. Well, at the moment I'm looking in the whiskeys, and not because I want to be some whiskey sommelier goofball, but because I just kind of want the best of everything. And the cycle has turned, and now I am looking at whiskey to find the best whiskey. And I hope it doesn't take too long to learn about this stuff, because I really don't want to be I really don't want to pigeonhole myself as the whiskey guy, or shoehorn myself as the whiskey guy. Alright, alright, let me go kill someone. Anyway, yeah, so there's several whiskeys, and I obviously am an American, so I could care less about the Irish whiskey, although I will try it. And the Scotch whiskey is cool, but to me that's in a league of its own, its own category. I don't want to discuss it at this time. So speaking of American whiskeys, I count rye whiskey and bourbon. Canadian whiskey can go suck a dick, because I think Canada in general needs to go suck a dick. So of the bourbon whiskeys, I've had Jack Daniels, which is actually not a bourbon, it's a Tennessee whiskey. And it sounds, which is can only be made in Tennessee whiskey. Yeah, can only be made in Tennessee, and I believe they age their barrels longer, or they like burn the barrels, and they char them a certain way, and so it's a more involved process than bourbon by definition. But Tennessee whiskey, when you hear that, it sounds like something that was invented for Hicks by Hicks, hillbilly stuff. But the fact of the matter is, it's more involved than bourbon, even though bourbon has the fancy French name. I mean, it's a French dynasty. It's not just a name. It's a bourbon dynasty, right? So it sounds like it's really frou-frou stuff, but Tennessee whiskey is actually more involved, and that's why that kind of explains, I think, why Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey has always tasted better to me than just this plain Jim Beam conventional. It's like the Bud Light of whiskey is Jim Beam. I never liked Jim Beam. I like the logo. I like the the keeping it in the family kind of stuff. I like that they make it of Kentucky. All the I like it on paper. But the flavor was off. It felt like it felt cheap. It tasted cheap. I don't know how to explain. Okay. But that doesn't mean I'm, doesn't mean I just hate. I mean, now that I say that, I've had the Lagavulin Scotch, which is a single malt or Scotch, unblended, right? So it's pure as it gets, as far as I'm concerned. And I had that, and it tasted cheap too. And it tasted kind of wrong. I don't know. I mean, maybe. See, that's what I don't know about the whiskey stuff. Is what I don't get is that maybe the whiskey is like supposed to taste wrong, and it's this kind of like masochistic ordeal that. See, I was spacing out. I shouldn't even had that rifle. I should have had the sidearm. Yeah, so I'm wondering about that. I know that the next rum I'm gonna get is a Bacardi. Oh no, I just had 2 Bacardis, so I'm not gonna get Bacardi. I'm in Miami, so I'm sampling the rum down here more than the whiskey. But back when I get up north side, or back to the Pacific Northwest, wherever I'm moving, right, I'm gonna get some whiskeys again. Oh god. Yeah. Well, looks like grenade probably, yeah, fucked them up. Not even. Yeah, and, so apparently the Bacardi factory is in Puerto Rico and outside San Juan. So when I was planning to go down there, I was kind of planning to go to it, but it's like $30 to go on the tour, and you know, Bacardi's cool, but it's not that cool. You know, if I was made out of money, yeah, I'd do anything once, but you know, I'm not. I gotta be selective. The rums, I'm kind of into the brown rums. I mean, it's the brown rum has got more flavor. So, you know, the white rum is like, it's leaning towards vodka in my book. So I mean, I like it the way I like vodka, but I don't like it the way I like a rum. And the not the spiced rum, that's just some gimmick. But that's like Captain Morgan gimmick or something. But the brown rum, I think they use brown sugar or in it or something versus white rum, which uses like cane sugar. I don't know. That could be off base, and I probably am off base. But they use that, and it's just flavorful. It's flavorful in a different way than whiskey is. Whiskey is also brown, but it's not the same kind of, you know, herbs or whatever. It's not the same botanicals. The botanicals are different. So you just get a different flavor, different plants, right? You know, same color, different plants. And so I like that. For me, that's kind of like a south of the border kind of, you know, drink. And then, but then whiskey, I like the whiskey. I like, I've had Buffalo Trace. I've had Burnside Bourbon. I've had Bullet Rye. And then Johnny Walker Black among the scotches. Johnny Walker Black is the best one I've had. It's a blended scotch though, so you're not getting anything real pure with it. But as far as flavor goes, it's better than Jack Daniels. And Jack Daniels is pretty good. But if you're gonna get Johnny Walker, get black. Don't get the blue or the red or the gold or whatever they are. They're all just kind of like different. I mean, I don't know. I've only had a couple of the other alternatives, but the black is the one that is like the not the keystone, but it's the apex. You know, it's the one that, you know, to me is like, you know, everything else depends on that one, right? You know, none of the other drinks would matter if it weren't for Johnny Walker Black, which it's like Coke Classic, you know. Diet Coke, yeah, but Coke Classic is what it all depends on. Anyway, Burnside Bourbon is really good. That's probably the best bourbon I've had outside of, yeah, that's the best bourbon I've had. I'm in Portland, because bourbon, unlike Tennessee whiskey, can be made anywhere in the United States. It's, you know, it's kind of a marketing gimmick to say that with the whole bourbon name, fancy name, because it sounds like it's more rarefied, like champagne or Dijon mustard, or you know, whatever. But it's or Worcestershire sauce or something, I don't know, but it's not like that. So yeah. But bourbon's good anyway, and the one from Portland area, Burnside, which is named after the Civil War hero, and it's also a street in Portland, so it's a double entendre. That's maybe a triple entendre, because the Burnside implies that the whiskey alcohol from than the bourbon burns. But anyway, it was good. I had it was the best I had at that time. Now, I'd say that Jack Daniel's is it's a little bit. There's a lot. I'm the next whiskey I'll probably have is
Ha atacado primero.
Highland Park, and then I'll probably go for Shiva's whiskey or Scotch. I'll blend another blended Scotch, and then there's a few others that I can't imagine I'll like that much, but I'll do it just for the sake of completeness. For the sake of completion, for completion's sake. For completion's sake, I'll do it for completion's sake. Yeah, and then after that, so if I could recommend a Scotch to you for a beginner, Johnny Walker Black. Let's just do it. Don't even question it, because it's going to be worth it. Well, it might be a little odd because it's your first time and you just don't know what to expect. But compared to other Scotches, it's good, especially at that price range. And then
Vuelve a la zona de combate.
for bourbon, I recommend the Burnside bourbon. Tennessee whiskey, I don't even know of another distillery that makes Tennessee whiskey. In fact, it might have all Tennessee whiskeys might be forced to be made in that one county in Tennessee where Jack Daniel's is made. I know that in Kentucky you can go on those bourbon tours, but it's not a geographical necessity to have bourbon made in Kentucky. It's just that there's a good industry. But then all the barrels are made from. One thing that is true is that all the barrels for bourbon has to be made out of American oak. So, and it's charred American oak. It's not really that different from. They store it, right? They store the whiskey in there, so it's not all that different from wine, or in that way. Although they don't ferment it, they distill it, and they make it with a lot of corn. I believe what is this? The recipe is rye, corn, and what the hell do they make whiskey out of? Rye, corn. It's a mix of rye and corn and wheat. I feel like I'm missing something. But corn whiskey. I've had corn whiskey, and it was an unpleasant experience. But I was able to laugh at myself when I did it. So corn whiskey is something you get as a joke. But you know, it's not a bad joke. It's just, yeah. Corn whiskey it's kind of a mess. So, and I've only had one brand, and I've honestly I would be kind of surprised that there were more than one. Probably is, but I think there's only like a couple that have any recognition or shelves or are on any of the shelves in stores, stored on any shelves. But Buffalo Trace is a good one. It's a little bit of it's like a whiskey for guys who want a whiskey, but they don't want to like get to know their whiskey. You know, it's a whiskey for someone who like isn't really into whiskey. If that makes any sense. It's like for the non-committal type. The kind of Buffalo Trace is whiskey for someone who doesn't want to put any effort in at all into finding out the best whiskey or the whiskey that's right for them. They just want something that is you know, serviceable. That's what I would call it. It's the most serviceable whiskey. And of course, Jim Beam is probably the most affordable whiskey, right? It's not the same thing as serviceable. Anyway, I'm done with the hard alcohol. I would think about say if you're gonna get a vodka, you may as well go for Sky Vodka. I actually interviewed the creator of Sky Vodka, and he is like a member of Mensa. and like a prolific inventor of all sorts of stuff. But one thing he had like a school like NYU named after him, the guy in the world, and he invented vodka to be free of congeners, certain kinds of congeners that are conducive to hangovers, which is to say that he made it so that his vodka would be less likely to give anyone a hangover. No hangover. I can attest to the validity of that, but all in all, Sky Vodka is not the most, I mean, it's a good vodka. It's kind of featureless, it's not Russian. I'm pretty sure it's like an American vodka. In fact, I know it's an American vodka. But, so if you really had to get a vodka for just for your home bar, then, don't get Sky Vodka necessarily, but if you're gonna drink vodka and you have some shit you want to do the next day, then go for Sky Vodka, because you're not.
Casi hemos ganado.
Expert in this. So I guess what I know most about is beer, and I can tell you some good beers. Also, first of all, if you're gonna buy beer at the grocery store, at the grocer or the supermarket or the Whole Foods or whichever, get local as much as you can if you can afford it. It's really not my favorite. If you can't afford it, I would say go for a Miller Lite, because they really try to make you feel like you're not buying, backwater sludge when you get a Miller Lite. They try to class it up. I believe the High Life is called the champagne of beers, even though it's not the fucking champagne of beers. It's a budget beer, but it's charming that they try to make me feel like I'm not a desperado hobo when I get a $22 18 rack from the Chevron. Anyway, the next, okay, and then of course, if you haven't had a Guinness, try Guinness. I had a friend who still do have a friend, but I'm considering disbanding him as a friend because of this, and it's that he says that Guinness is he goes around saying that Guinness is his favorite beer. Guinness? Like, come on, man. Guinness is not Guinness. Guinness is a good beer. It is. It's a good beer, but to go around and tell people it's your favorite, I mean, that's a novice. That's a rook move. You're a rook. That's just rook. It's noob, novice, rook shit. But he, but I don't blame him completely, because it is a good beer. And if you go to an Irish pub and you're like, oh, I need something Irish, and you don't know anything better, or if you don't want any Jameson or whatever, it's like Jameson. Guinness is like Jameson. You get a Guinness, and hopefully they pour it good, so you get the full, bouquet of flavor, the aftertaste that survives, that so I've been doing this for about 40 minutes. Wow, it feels more like 20. What I will say is that on that note, beers. I had the Kona like surfboard lager with whatever, it's like a summer lager by the Hawaiian company, Kona, and longboard Kona, that kind of thing. And I didn't really think twice about them. I thought they were kind of like the SpongeBob beer, but it hit the spot, especially with when you're with some like pacified vegan friends who like don't really want to like go hard, and they just kind of want to sit back and like enjoy the weather. Then that's a good beer, especially then it's a good beer on a warm day. Great beer on a warm day. Apparently, it's the number one craft beer of Hawaii, so that says something. I grew up on Lagunitas because I'm from I'm roughly from the area that Lagunitas is made. There's a town of Lagunitas, although the beer's not really made there. It's made in Petaluma, which is in Northern California. It's like a different county, but I've been to the brewery, and it's actually a really good brewery. I went to the Sierra Nevada brewery because it's also Northern California, and I actually met the historian of the. I guess I'm friends. I'm acquaintance. I'm a decent acquaintance with the historian of the Sierra Nevada brewery. So that was cool, and it was very commercial though, the brewery itself. But they do have a good legacy. Like I tried some beers that they were like off the market, but off the shelves, but old school beers, and it's all good beer. Sierra Nevada is all good. My problem with Sierra Nevada is that it's a kind of an older company, and it's not really part of the craft movement anymore. It's sort of grown bigger than that, and it to me it's kind of like I don't know. When I was really young, I thought that they were like something hip, something else. I thought they were something else, but now I just kind of view them as like I don't know. I just view them as, I'm ranting, but the word for it is it's commercial. It's commercial in a way that it kind of bugs me. Anyway, but as flavor goes, it's pretty good. I would give their flavor like a 6 or 7 out of 10. Maybe a 6.5 to a 7 to an 8 depending on what mood I'm in. I think that the beer to go to nowadays is that's like it is the Deschutes beer out of I believe Bend and kind of Portland, Oregon, probably Bend, Oregon. Deschutes to me is what Sierra Nevada used to be for me. I just think I've become a little more connected to it. There's a lot of other good ones. So there's Racer 5. It's an IPA. It's decent. But it's as craft beer goes, a lot of these are kind of they don't seem that special to me. What else is there? I'm missing something. Yeah, but when I go to my local bar in my hometown, I usually get I don't get Lagunitas because I just had so much Lagunitas in my day because it's what my family buys that I just don't buy for myself. Plus, I never was the biggest fan of it, although it is a solid beer. But I usually get, like I said, Sierra Nevada, or when I not for myself, but when I buy a pitcher for the group, I get a Sierra Nevada or I get it to Deschutes. I think there's something else I'm missing. I can't recall it. As far as stout goes, I'm very interested in going to like the tiny nano breweries that just make beer just enough for like one community, one town, and that you have to you'd have to know about it to find it. You couldn't really look it up. I'm interested in going to those places and getting like a hefty, kind of like a stout, something hefty, and never like the typical like stout. I try to get a flavor like oatmeal or peanut butter, coffee, or chocolate, and that stuff is really what home brewing I think is or just brewing at large is about is that kind of the weighty, over flavored, comedically flavored beers. That's what, and they just have there's a contemplation to them. You know what it is actually. They're beers that border on scotch or whiskey or good whiskey. They're beers that border on a cigar. And I enjoy myself a cigar. Also, cigars are good if you're not into them. I'm getting lately into cigarillos because the size of most cigars is a little bit time consuming, and I just don't want to spend that much time on a cigar. Not with the 1,000 things I have to do. Anyway, but cigars are great accompaniment to a beverage, to a fine beverage. What another thing is that Cigar City. I'm in Tampa area, Miami. I'm in the Miami area, but that's near Tampa. And there's a beer out of there called Cigar City that I've yet to try, but from what I can tell, they promote themselves pretty well, and they fairly successful business. Probably decent beers. One of the beers I had was Copper Kettle, or it was Copper Tail, I believe it was called Copper Tail Brewery. And that's out of Tampa as well. And I had their porter, and their design, the graphic design is really something else. I don't remember loving the beer, but I definitely would bring that beer to a gathering. It's you know what it is. It's kind of like a cool dinner party, late night, beer. It's almost like a beer you'd have, and I'm talking about this specific porter. It's a beer you'd have at after dinner with dessert and coffee, even. Okay, I should really wrap it up. I'm not a fan of the sours. To me, are more interesting than the IPAs, and I'm not a fan of the IPAs anymore. I used to I used to kind of force myself to like them. I like them. I like them in the winter. I like them in the winter as like when I'm outdoors in the cold. No, but I'm like, I don't know. I mean, IPAs are, they're. What it was is that my sister was into them, and she introduced me to the whole concept. And well, my sister's older than me, so she must be wiser and more knowledgeable, and so I kind of bandwagoned onto it. And then my dad was into them, and he knew a lot about beer before I knew anything about beer. So I was like, I took his word that they were good. But lately, I just kind of find them to be overwrought and kind of like, they're not as eccentric as the sours, and that's why I kind of like the sours, because I might not drink them that much, but I like that they exist. It's a novelty. But the IPA is not exactly the West Coast IPA in specific, which is the overhopped, overwrought, extra bitter beer. That to me is something that's like designed as like an everyman's drink. But to me it has like it's kind of like it's flavored wrong, so I never buy them anymore because I've just kind of given up on it, and that might be a sad note, but it's sort of the harsh truth. I'm leading up. I like lagers, I like stouts, pilsners, right? I like pilsners. If you're gonna get a pilsner Urquell is my problem. It's so conventional. You could get it. You could also get Stella Artois or something, but it's kind of an uneducated go at it. I like the Italian beer, Birra Moretti. Something about it has that kind of sleekness, that thinness that is in the Pilsner. that it's like a lot. It's somewhere between the lager and the IPA. It's got that, but it's they do it. They do it in a way that in such a way that I kind of like. I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's my favorite beer in that category though, and it's an Italian beer, right? A lot of good beers everywhere though. If you look hard enough, there's terrible beers anywhere. Actually, terrible beers are hard to find. Truly terrible beers are hard to find. But you might have to go like some place that isn't known for making beer, like Egypt, to get that. But I should wrap up probably on a positive note. So if I want to recommend a beer to anyone, Birra Moretti, Italian beer, really good, really good. I've only probably had so many Italian beers, but this one's the one that always stands out, and it's always the one that I go back to. Okay, and then if you're gonna lay yourself back, go for the Kona. Or barring that, you could do the Fat Tire. Blue Moon's a good one. I like Blue Moon. That's sort of like the Blue Moon wheat beer is kind of the lowest I go in terms of mainstream, middle of the road conventional beers. I think it's got a good. I think that despite being sort of a conventional beer, it in actual fact kind of supplies itself for a niche market, because wheat with all this gluten-free stuff, wheat beer is kind of something that's a little bit on the outskirts. It's not really the most conventional, usual beverage of choice. So I like that, and then anything above that, I probably could find a place for. Beneath that, I mean, I like Bud Light if I'm moving fast, if I'm not, trying to think too hard. Bud Light, of course, and that's the most American beer in a sense, but doesn't mean it's the best beer. I have not really trifled with Samuel Adams. It's just it's very East Coast. I'm not that Northeast rather. It's very Northeast. Apparently, it's the number one beer in like states like all the New England states, and then like New Jersey and Illinois, and those are the beers that swear by Samuel Adams. But I think that's kind of like a like a working man with a strong historic sense of tradition kind of beer. But it's not my favorite. Coors, it just seems like a strange. It's just like an oddball version of Bud Light. Miller Lite is like the sort of pretentious, classier version, fake class version of Bud Light. But that's kind of what I am, so maybe that's why I like it. Cool. And also, I don't have a problem with any of them. I mean, they're all kind of serviceable beers, cheap, affordable beers. Brews, right? So amber ale, a beer I am leaning into lately is amber ale, and I don't really have a formed opinion on it, although I promise that I will soon. And on that note, I'll let the suspense hang, and next podcast I'll try to tell you about amber ale if you give a shit. All right, so